All right, everybody. So today I am going to replace this, the inside of the toilet, the flush valve and everything. I'm going to use this Corky Universal Complete Kit. I've already taken apart the toilet, but I'll show you how easy it is to put together, and basically to take it apart, it's just doing it opposite. All right, so without further ado, here we go. So I've opened the package. Inside the package, you're going to get all of the, these are going to be the screws to actually mount the top of the toilet to the bottom of the toilet once you place everything together. You're going to get the instructions on how to do it. The piece that I need to replace is actually this piece here because it cracked. And what was happening is it was just running all the time. So instead of just changing this out, I figured I would just go ahead and change everything. So we're going to change that piece out. We've got this piece. This piece is going to fit on the bottom of the top of the tank. Just to kind of, it's a nice little seal that seals it from the top to the bottom. And then we've got the flush valve and everything. This is the first time me using this product, so it should be okay. But again, I figured I would just go ahead and replace everything, so this way I don't have to worry about it for a while. So let's go ahead and move to the bathroom. All right, so this is what the bottom of the top of the tank is going to look like. So what we're going to do is we're placing this piece on the inside, and then there is a rubber piece that I've got to hunt down somewhere. All right, so this is the rubber seal. I just taken it off and put it in the other room. So that's going to go on the bottom. You'll see exactly how that is. I won't bore you with you having to watch every single second of me doing this, but I will show you what it looks like as we go along. Okay, here's also another seal. This is, I believe, what they call a chipboard washer. This is also going to go on there too, okay? So here we go. So as you can see, I've put the flush valve through the inside of the top of the toilet. I have also placed the chipboard washer, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place the sponge gasket on top of that. Earlier I called it a rubber gasket. It's not a rubber gasket. It is actually called a sponge gasket. So we're just going to go ahead and do that right now. But before you do that, I'm sorry, let me back up. We're putting the flush valve in. We're putting on the chipboard washer. Then I have to put on the mounting nut. Sorry, because that's what screws onto that black piece that's sticking out of the bottom. And then we're going to go ahead and put on our sponge gasket. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then I will be right back. All right, so as you can see, I have put in the flush valve. Then I put on the chipboard washer underneath. Then I went ahead and I used the mounting screw to screw everything together. And then I went ahead and placed the sponge gasket on top of that whole assembly. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the actual toilet tank and the top of it, and I will go ahead and put it back on the bottom and go ahead and screw all the bolts back in. Now remember, when you're screwing in the mounting nut, you want to just hand tighten it. So just hand tighten it as tight as you can. You don't want to use any kind of a tool because you don't want to strip it. You don't want to break it because then you're running out to the store, you're getting another one, okay? So just a nice snug fit. And then you're going to go ahead and place on the sponge gasket. So now what I've done is I've placed that piece back on top. There's the bucket that I used to drain the water out from the tank to begin with. That's what it's going to look like inside. You want to make sure that you are pointing the flapper piece. You really want that towards. You really want that piece to be facing towards the fill valve. Okay, and that's per the directions. So we're going to go ahead and put the bolts through the tank, which is going to now connect the top of the tank with the bottom of the tank. Again, making sure that you are screwing them in evenly. So as you tighten one bolt, you'll want to go ahead and move over to the next one, tighten that a little bit, move to the next one, tighten that a little bit, so on and so forth. This way, it will not get, you won't break the tank. Because that's the biggie. If you over tighten it, you can actually break this tank, and now you're back to square one. Okay? Okay, so this is the way it's going to look like when you're putting it inside the tank. This is the way exactly how you want to do it. You will be taking out the old ones, and the old ones are probably going to be old nasty. Mine were black, and as I touched them, they were actually falling a piece in my hand. So you're going to take this piece. This washer is going to go over this screw. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to place that through the hole. That's going to connect the top and the bottom. And then make sure you are taking a metal washer that's going to go up in there. And then you're going to go ahead and put the nut on there. So that's exactly the way it's going to look. So this spot right here that's in between is obviously where the toilet's going to be. This is going to be where the top of the toilet is. That's going to be where the bottom toilet is. All right, so we'll go ahead and screw all three of those in, and we'll go from there. So I've gone ahead and screwed in all three of these bolts. And what I did was I used the level just to make sure that it's level. So I tightened it down as much as I could by hand. And then what I did is I kind of cranked using a 1/2-inch wrench to hold the bottom. And then I just used a long screwdriver and then cranked each one maybe about 10 times. And then I would go to the next one, I'd crank on it 10 times, and I would keep checking the level just to make sure it's okay. And then once it was in there tight and there's no wobbling of the top tank, I made sure that it was center, sitting on the toilet center. And once it was straight, there was no wobbling, then I was done with that part. Now it is time to put in the fill valve, I believe it's called. That's going to be next. That's obviously going to fit in that hole right there. What I also did is I cleaned out the tank a little bit. I brought it over to one of the wash basins and went ahead and cleaned it out, because sometimes there gets some gook in there, and you want to kind of clean out that gook so it's not, it doesn't clog up your system. So now what's going to happen is we're going to go ahead and screw in the fill valve. That's going to fit right down in that one hole that we were looking at earlier. And then this is going to go underneath the tank. You want to screw this down as tight as you can, because this little seal here is what's stopping the water from coming out from the tank. So usually what I do is I just do it as tight as I can do it with my hand. That's usually seems to be tight enough for me. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've screwed that in with the plastic hex nut that was included. The instructions say to make sure that you keep it about 1 inch under the flush valve here, where the handle is. This is where the handle is going to go. So they say to keep this at least 1 inch under that. I just kind of eyeball it. So once you get that done, then you are going to screw that thing back into the bottom of that fill valve. All right, and that's where the water is. And let's go on with the next step. All right, so now we have the refill tube, and there's also this little clip that the refill tube goes into. If you're having trouble inserting this into the tube, you want to go ahead and run it under hot water for a little bit, because that's going to make it more pliable, and then you can go ahead and jam that sucker back in. All right, so we'll go ahead and deal with that in a second, and I'll be right back. So I have attached that piece that we were looking at earlier. That's just going to clip right on that valve, and the tube is just way too long. So that's really how it wants to kind of sit in there, like that, but it's way too long. So I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut it off here, because this is the valve that it's got to fit into. And you don't want it all kinked up or anything. So give it a little bit of a slack, cut it a little bit longer than you probably would want to, just in case you don't make a mistake. So you can always go back and cut a little bit more. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and do that step. So as you can see, I cut it, and it's pretty much just like a perfect fit. It's got a little bit of an arch in there, so it's got a little bit of some leeway. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to make sure that everything's tightened up, everything's ready to go, and then I'm going to turn the water back on. So I went ahead and I reattached the handle piece. It's a little dirty, I'm sorry. That's really the reason why I wanted to do this whole project, because that was broken. And then I realized that that piece that we're looking at here on the old assembly was also broken, which is why the water kept running. So we'll go ahead and we just went ahead and did the entire thing brand new. It's just better that way. This way I don't have to deal with it for a long time. We're going to go ahead and turn the water back on. And from reading the directions, it says the water should actually run from 3 different areas when the tank is being filled up. So we'll go ahead and check that out. We'll do that right now. So I went ahead and turned the water back on. Everything so far looks decent. The big thing that you want to look at again is once it fills up, we're going to flush it a couple times. We're going to make sure that that it's not leaking from where we screwed everything down. This actually is supposed to adjust the flow, this little piece here. So you see when I turned it the one way, it stopped flowing. You turn it the opposite way, and then the water comes back on. So here we're turning it off, and then here we're turning it back on. All right, so it's filling up. Let's just hope that it stops at a... All right, so there we go. So it went ahead and stopped. It's at a decent level. We're gonna go ahead and flush it. Let's check it out, see what's going on. So the one thing that you want to make sure also is when you're attaching that chain back to the name escapes me right now. Back to the flapper. You want to make sure that the chain isn't so long that when it closes, the chain actually goes into the drain itself, because what that'll do is that'll just keep the water, running all the time, and obviously you don't want that. Okay, so that is it so far. We're going to try it a couple more times. I'm just going to kind of let it sit for a little bit, and I'm going to make sure that it's not leaking from anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of clean up the area, dry everything off, and then just make sure that there's no leakage. So the only thing is, it does suck down a lot of water. So I'm gonna go ahead and check to see what I can do to possibly change that, because obviously you see how much water is being sucked out of the tank. What I might have to do is just move the refill valve down a little bit so the water hits that sooner and stops it. So we'll go ahead and check it out, and I'll mess with that, and I'll let you guys know in a second what happened. Okay, so I went ahead and flushed it a couple times. I let it sit for a little bit. Cleaned up my mess. I still have a little bit of paper under there because that's where that thing connects in. And sometimes if it's just not tight enough, it will leak. So what I do is I will push it down inside a little bit, inside the tank, and kind of hand tighten it. But you never want to over tighten it because that's just all plastic. All right, so if anybody has any questions, comments, let me know, and I hope this worked for you. I hope it makes it just that much easier to fix your toilet. Happy pooping.